Welcome to the Only Dream Big podcast, starring your host Donnie Bedney. Donnie is the president of PSP Metrics and has been in the assessment and human capital management industry for more than 15 years. Get ready as Donnie, together with industry experts, share how you can create better workplaces, improve employee experiences, and ultimately drive change through people.
Welcome back, everyone, to the show, the Only Dream Big pod. I am your host, Donnie Bedney, and I am so excited to have this next guest on with me, Laurel Rutledge. Laurel, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Well, we like to, just kind of hop in.
Yeah.
I'm sure, just from our pre-call, there are so many things I'm looking forward to you sharing with the community. But let's start off. I mean, can you take us back to the beginning? What led you to start a career in HR?
I just had a master class this week, and one of the things I told them was, look, we have this picture in our heads that your career is like this ladder, right? It's a career path. And it really isn't. I heard a woman from Marathon Oil say years ago, it's really thinking about a career flow. And my career was a hot mess, just like everybody else's. If I could have planned it, I don't know that I would have planned it that way because my undergrad is in accounting, right? And then I did operations, I did international business, I worked for Deloitte, I did enterprise risk management. And I actually came to HR pretty late in my career, even though I ended up spending about 20 years there. But all of those things that led up to me being in HR is what made me an exceptional HR person, because I'm a business person first and an HR person second. So it all came full circle. So even my dad telling me, hey, honey, I know you want to have a degree in psychology, but you got to get a job when you get out. It kind of came full back because being in HR, you're basically a therapist, babysitter, negotiator, mediator, all of that.
Man, and you know what's so intriguing, I think, just as you share that about your background is to have kind of that non-traditional path. I'm wondering, or I'm imagining actually that it probably just really benefited you, once you moved onto the people side, kind of the business, right? Because as you know, like, one of my sayings is driving change through people. Right.
Yes.
So can you talk through like how all of kind of your operational and all these other experiences, kind of helped? I'm imagining like you probably have a different lens as you moved into, more of a focus just on human capital and, within different organizations.
Well, it's interesting that you say human capital, because that's what I talk about it, right? The human capital asset. That's what the role of HR is to help organizations make the most of their human capital asset. And people get all in their feelings about using assets, but that's what it is when you're talking about a business and you're talking about for profit in particular. And so for me, this idea of HR was more about having had a phenomenal first human resources leader, phenomenal, who's still a mentor of mine today and a dear friend. And he was the one that said, look, I can teach you HR. I need really good business minds. So have you ever thought about HR? That's literally how it started. Have you ever thought about HR? I'm like, well, absolutely. And it's all about understanding the business first, because here's where HR people get in trouble. It's the soft stuff. It's the, I need to fire somebody, or why can't we do, or what's the party? And as I told my people, I don't throw parties. That's not what I do. We're not the party people. But here's the thing, we are not the owners of culture, but we are the keepers of culture. We are the ones who say, here's what the organization says they want to do and who they say they want to be. Is that aligning with the behaviors that we see? And if it is not, we are in a position and have a requirement to be courageous enough to go to an organization and say, your actions aren't aligning with your words, and we're lying to people. We got to do a better job. And so by being a business person first, I was able to speak, and still can speak, the language of business. I understand how it works. I understand the levers. I understand the impact of HR decisions on the business. So I can get all of that stuff out of the way. They know I can understand. They know I can function. And now I can talk deeper to them about the more difficult people things, because it gets emotional when you're talking about people. And I can get emotional because it's all about business.
Yeah. Wow. Ooh, wait. So rich. So rich. So with that, right?
Yeah.
You obviously were just had such a phenomenal, in my opinion,
Yeah.
worldview
Thank
and
you.
lens, for that kind of career. What was kind of the moment where you said, "Hey, I'm having this impact, around change and all of these things internally."
Hmm.
At what point did you kind of have like a moment to say, "Hey, you know what? Maybe I can have more of an impact externally."
Yeah.
And starting your own company and stuff like that. At what point, or what kind of led you
Yeah.
to that epiphany?
So it's kind of a circuitous story. I would not be honest on the Only Dream Big podcast if I said, "Oh,
Ah,
no, I just knew I was going to serve bigger." That's just not true. What happened was I was in a really toxic environment and I just got tired. I just
yeah.
realized I'm just done.
Okay.
And then it was like, you know what? When I look back at all of the things that I've done, when I talk to the people that I've hired, that I've
Mhm,
coached, that I've trained,
mhm.
everyone from the boardroom to the plant floor,
Yep.
I know that I can serve bigger. I can do a much broader, much deeper, much more authentic job of serving people
Mm,
on my own than I can with the
mm,
constrictions of an organization, with the worry, with depending on how your employment law department operates, with
mm.
lawyers who are more concerned about not having to write a check or just willing to write a check to keep from doing the right thing. I mean, just,
Sure.
I was fortunate in my career to have some really, really great employment attorneys that I worked with. And then I had some horrendous ones.
Okay.
And so all of that just kind of combined that toxicity of being one of only two senior level African American women in a global company of 17,000. Two. So I just knew it was time. I was tired of fighting. I'm not conflict avoidant by any means, but
Yeah.
being in constant conflict was just too much. And so
Mm,
when I decided to go, I had so much peace. I knew
mm,
it was time.
mm.
I was ready to walk out,
Yeah.
and they panicked.
Fine.
So we were able to make it work for me. It worked out really great for me.
Okay.
And I was not in a position where I was trying to hurt them, right? So
Sure.
I tell people all the time, don't hurt yourself because you're mad at them. When it's time to go, it's time to
Mm,
go.
mhm.
But don't be so mad that you're trying to really burn a bridge on purpose. There's some that need to be
Sure.
burned down, but most of
Yeah.
them you just need to leave. And
Yeah.
so I just knew it was time. And as I made that decision, I said, what am I going to do? I'm going to take all of these things that I know and I'm just going to serve bigger. I'm going to step into this purpose and just serve bigger.
Man, so thank you for sharing that. And you're right. We like to be transparent and authentic
Yes.
in everything that we share on the show. So that reminds me so much. I'm sure you've heard the story around a stranger who's walking down a farm road. It's really a dirt road.
Yeah.
And sees a farm way far off to the left, and decides to kind of stop off to potentially rest for a moment,
Mhm.
maybe grab some water, etc. And as he's walking down this dirt road, he sees the farmer in a rocking chair with a large hound dog right next to the farmer. And the stranger's like, all of a sudden the dog howls out, and so the
Mhm.
stranger kind of gets afraid, and thinks that the dog might be running out to it, but the dog continues
Mhm.
howling and just stays there. And the closer the stranger gets to the porch, the louder
Mhm.
and basically more excruciating the hound dog is screaming, or howling in that case.
Yeah.
And so by the time the stranger gets to the farmer, he says, um, "Hey, Mister, um, I think there's something wrong with your dog." And the farmer says, no, he's fine." The stranger's like, "Look, I'm not a veterinarian or anything else, but like I'm
Right.
pretty sure there's something wrong with your dog." And
Yeah.
the farmer says, "No, he's perfectly fine. He's laying on a nail." And the stranger's like, "Well, why doesn't he get up?" And the farmer says, "It doesn't hurt bad enough yet."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, it's amazing how, quite often we find ourselves in environments or situations that, may be dysfunctional, right?
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
Familial environments, organizations, etc. And we
Yeah.
find almost this comfort in basically this very potentially toxic or dysfunction.
Yes. Mhm.
But it's always clear, if you haven't moved, it may
Yes.
not hurt enough,
Yes.
Yeah, and so very interesting. And this is not, kind of part of the outline, but obviously
Yeah.
my show. So,
Yes.
curious for you as you've coached people, who
Mhm.
are in those environments, etc. What is some of your advice? One to organizations to, frankly, um, to a phrase that you used earlier, to truly be the keepers, kind of the
Mhm.
culture, and to make sure that you're shaping environments for
Yeah.
folks to thrive, right?
Mhm.
And then, simultaneously, what is some advice to folks who potentially are in environments like that, and maybe they're in some pain, but is there anything that you can advise them that can kind of free them to pursue their career, their dreams, etc., potentially in another organization or outside of the
Mhm.
current that they're in? So two pronged,
Right. Well, so I'll take the first part first for
please.
organizations. What I tell organizations is you got to speak the truth. You just got to be transparent. People are not stupid. People will listen to what you say. They will believe what you do. And
Mm,
so,
mhm.
for those in HR in particular, do not come to HR and not be courageous. And I've told many an HR person, you're not meant for HR. It's time for you to get out. Because if you cannot speak truth to power in HR, don't need to be there. You need to have
Speak
the
truth to
the
power.
the idea of the business and the goals and the outcomes that the business needs in mind all the time. Mission first, people always, right?
Mm,
And then you need to be an advocate for the people. And it's a fine line to walk, but that's why it takes courage. Because
yeah,
if the business isn't working, nobody has a job. And
yeah,
if nobody wants to work there, the business can't run. I mean, it's a symbiotic relationship. And so
sure.
HR has to walk that line. So I tell organizations, you got to speak the truth, and your
Yeah,
actions have to align with your words or not, but know that. Be
yeah.
honest with yourself and be ready to accept the consequences of those actions because we all have a choice, but we're not free from the
Mm,
consequences of the choices we
mhm.
make. So
Yeah,
that's where I go with organizations and leaders in those organizations.
love it.
For people, what I say is a couple of things. One, always pause. If something doesn't
Mm,
feel right, I had a person that I know, her name is Sabrina Rising, said, your head always tells you the truth. Your head always lies. Your gut always tells you the truth. If
ooh,
something doesn't feel
ooh.
right, I need you to take a minute,
Mhm.
just pause. Am I just upset? Is that just my nervous system, right? Polyvagal theory. Is it just my nervous system kind of upset? Did somebody just trigger me?
Yeah,
What's really going on? So
yeah.
pause, figure out what's really going on. And then once you know that, then ask the question, like I just asked in my mastermind, is it you or is it them?
Ah,
With no judgment. With no
sure,
judgment. Because
sure.
if you're working for someone else, the likelihood of that organization being 100% in lockstep with your values and your desires is between slim and none. So you got to be really clear about what your deal breakers are versus what's just uncomfortable and you can live with, or you try to get in different departments or something. So the first thing
Mhm.
is get clear on what it is. What are you really feeling? And then two, understand, is it you or is it them? And when
Mm,
you know the answer to those questions, then you can decide what you want to do. Do I stay? Do I
mm,
go to a different department? Do I just suck it up and just take a
yeah.
vacation? Do I do something else to manage me? Um,
Mm,
and I'll give your listeners an example. When I say is it you or is it them?
mhm.
I don't have a poker face. I'm
Mm.
not going to get one. Never had one. At this age, it's not coming. And I don't want to do the work to get one. It's just not worth it, right? But because I know I don't have a poker face,
Yep.
what I can do is manage the words that I use and the tone with which I use them.
Ah,
So even if my face is saying, have you lost your mind? My words may say, okay, now help me understand
mhm.
what you meant by that,
Oh,
right?
man.
And so I know me. I know
Yeah,
me. I know the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so
yeah,
that whole idea of is it me or is it them is
yeah,
critical in your career because taking that information
mm,
in, getting feedback, but also being really honest with yourself is the
yep,
way you're going to be able to move.
yeah. Well, and I think that this is such an interesting, potentially an interesting transition, because
Hmm.
you have your own business, right? And
Yeah.
you offer, coaching and consulting services, and even, programs, around, like, building an effective
Hmm.
team, and but also
Yeah.
personal development, right? And so,
Yes.
can you share a little bit more about, kind of how you decided to also offer, frankly,
Yeah.
personal development services, on top
Sure.
of all the other,
Yeah.
kind of services, and how that's such a critical component, basically. I
Yeah.
imagine it integrates well into all the other work that you do.
Absolutely. It has been a transition. And I will say this for people who are coming out of corporate, going into entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
Um, One, take your time. I did not, a lot of people do a side hustle and then start, right? And
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
Hmm.
I knew I did not want to continue to be someone's HR person. I don't want to do
Hmm.
that ever again in my life if I can help it. I don't want to be your in the day-to-day grind of HR. I just don't have it in me. There's so much energy that's needed right now, especially right now with COVID.
Oof.
I know me and I do
Yeah.
not have the energy or the wherewithal to do that.
Okay.
But as I got out to start doing my own thing, I
Hmm.
knew I wanted to do some coaching and some development. But you really got to think about who you go to for assistance. So I was in a great mastermind, and they're fantastic, a great mastermind. But
Yeah.
what I've realized in hindsight is while we were saying the same words, we meant something different because most of the people in my mastermind had not been in corporate. So when we said things
Hmm.
like strategy, or we said things like plan, or we said things like, team, we were saying the same words but meaning something different. And so you end
Hmm.
up, at least for me, getting almost led into doing some things that are absolutely in your zone of excellence, but
Sure.
not necessarily in your zone of genius or what your heart's desire is to do. So I've got a whole, online HR portal for small businesses that
Yeah.
I hate. I spent a lot of time, I did it. It's fantastic. But I'm like, you know what, Laurel, you're not going to go keeping up on the latest, rules around FMLA or what the
Yeah.
minimum wage is. You're not going to do that. So
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
So for me, that transition into deciding what to do was going through, this is year number 5 of the business, going through a lot of things that I could do
Yeah.
and could do exceptionally well, but I didn't want to do. And I had to go
Hmm.
through that to get here. And so my business now
Hmm.
is all in line with alignment, vision, and action. Everything I do, alignment,
Hmm.
vision, and action. And so from a personal development perspective, you got to be aligned with who you are and where you are. You got to
Yeah.
know what you want and get clear on that vision.
Hmm.
And then you got to move into action. My
Hmm.
entire programs are designed around that.
Got
And
it.
then from a consulting perspective, it still aligns. I
Mm.
work with leaders and their teams. I do individuals and their teams, but it's all still in that same vein of
Mhm.
alignment, vision, action. What I don't do is go in and be someone's HR person. I
Mhm.
will support HR organizations, and I've done a lot with helping people understand what it really means to be an HR business partner, because
Sure.
no other function still has business partner in their name.
Mhm.
That tells you something about the function. And
Yeah.
so I do that, but it
Yeah.
all for me is about alignment, vision, and actions. Are your words aligned with your
Mhm.
actions? Are you clear on who you are? Are you clear on what your vision is? And is your action moving you there? And are you so clear that you're also able to take in information
Mhm.
as it gathers and make adjustments? Because we get so locked into something. You may get after acquired information that says, I need to go left instead of right, but I still got my vision in front of me. I'm still going to get there. This is just a detour, not a derailer. So for
Mhm.
me, it all came down to this solidification of
Mhm.
getting clear on who you are, what you want, and what it's going to take to get there from the boardroom to the plant floor.
Alignment, vision, action. Woo! There's man. So I mean, you actually already moved into it because that whole I almost refer to it as AVA, but I guess it's the AVA,
Yeah, AVA. Yes,
right?
AVA. Yes,
First,
exactly.
that thing is potent.
Yeah.
And I think just because once again, like we love to share practical and pragmatic,
Hmm.
solutions for folks
Yes.
to really, be clear.
Hmm.
Let's talk, just for a second. You mentioned, this unique time that we're living in, right?
Yes.
And I've said it on some other shows, and I think you'll appreciate this. And so
Hmm.
I think we're in a unique time where a lot of folks, career wise and even organizations have built themselves
Hmm.
up as thought leaders within industries, right? And
Yes.
and I view a lot of those folks really as, thought leaders are people who know a whole lot about what used to be true, and
Hmm.
just enough about what's currently going on to be dangerous, right?
Yeah.
But I tweeted this the other day that, where I view a futurist as someone who has a very clear understanding of current state of the world
Hmm.
and environment,
Hmm.
and simultaneously are pushing people towards where they should be in the future. And actually, just a few episodes ago,
Mm-hmm.
good buddy of mine also stated, hey, and also futurists have an understanding of the past,
Yes.
as well, that kind of give them context, right? And so
Yes.
what I tweeted is that we just need far more futurists and
Mm-hmm.
fewer thought leaders. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so you referenced kind of this unique time. Can you talk through just like the significant importance of alignment,
Yeah.
vision, and action, now, because I would argue that we're truly at a watershed moment
Yes.
in time where we're not going back to anything.
Right. Right.
And so it seems even more critical and frankly an amazing opportunity for
Yeah.
organizations to align, create potentially a new vision or build on,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Mm-hmm.
the vision that they've already had as an organization, and
Yeah.
then take action towards that. And I'm
Yes.
imagining that you have
Yeah.
some more gems just for organizations and leaders,
Yeah.
in this unique time that we're living in.
Yeah. This is always an interesting question for me because I tend to be a little contrary, right? So
Okay.
our parents brought us up. I have a younger brother, and it was proper prior planning prevents poor performance, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
6 P's. So we were always forward thinking. You always got to have a plan, not only a plan B, but you probably got to have C, D, E, all the way through Z.
Yeah, no
And
doubt.
there's good and bad to that, right? Because you need to focus on A, but so I've always been kind of a forward thinker and thinking about how things potentially impact outcomes because
Mhm.
you can have good intentions with bad outcomes and
Mhm.
good and bad, right? And so
1,000%. Yeah.
um it's kind of when I think about this futurist look, there's a couple of things that come to mind that I always remind people is if you think about like a Motorola that's dead, right? They didn't think about where things were moving. If
Yeah.
you think about what happened with the automotive industry and how it went down when they had to get bailed out, that was
Mhm.
about healthcare. A big piece of it was about healthcare
Yeah.
because you got people that are working that were part of the union that were there that were no longer working on a car, but were
Mhm.
still getting paid a lot of money. So the cost of goods sold,
Mm.
business, right? The
Yep.
cost of goods sold continued to go up, but that wasn't actually what was being put into the car. So you're having to cover not only your current cost of goods sold, but this extra load on top of that. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody saw our
Yeah.
healthcare getting out of control. And
Yeah.
so when I talk to people and think and talk to organizations about where they want to go and what they want to do, it's
Yeah.
really about having a long-term vision and then listening
Mm.
and listening actively to what people say, what they don't say. Organizations that have been around 100 years, 200 years, 150 years, those are some of the most difficult organizations. On the one hand, yes, they have this great longevity, they have this great reputation. That's fantastic. On the
Mhm.
other hand, when you have a tenure of people that's 20 plus years
Yeah.
and a culture that is so, for lack of a better word, incestuous, right? It's a great place to be. This is where people want to stay.
Yep.
What you lose is the connection to things that have happened outside of that organization. You lose the
Yep.
influx of new ideas and new thoughts
Sure.
and innovation.
Mhm.
And we toss that word around all the time, but you have to see different stuff. You
Mhm.
have to be willing to look at perspectives that are different than yours. That's why I call it the
Mhm.
Rutledge perspective, right? It's all about perspective. How do you know that your reality makes sense if you've never listened to anyone else's? So,
Mm.
when we're talking about moving and futurist
Mm.
and thinking forward, especially in this day and time,
Yeah.
I encourage everyone again to pause, practice the pause. Companies, yes, employers are feeling like this is our time. We're going to demand everything we want. If
Yeah.
you want us, you're going to pay. If you want us, you're going to give us everything we want. That sounds really good. Companies, that doesn't mean you have to do that.
Mhm.
It doesn't. You
Yep.
still have a business to run. And depending on your perspective, whether
Yep.
you are interested in stakeholders or stockholders and how you run your business, you have some decisions you need to make that are viable for your business.
Mhm.
And there are going to be people who want to be there in the office every day. They exist. They still
Yeah.
exist today.
No doubt.
And so businesses do what you need to do for your business. Just understand the impact of that. If you want everybody back in the office, say you want everybody back in the office. Don't say it's because you can't work effectively from home because that's a lie, but
Ah,
say we want it there because it's part of our culture.
sure.
Employees,
Yeah.
potential employees, I
Mhm.
need you to get honest. Yes, this is a time where we can address some of the equity issues. Yes, this is a time when people are understanding that there's more than just work. All of that is true.
Yep.
And you can, if you are adding value, you can demand more. And it's still a company. What value are you bringing to demand what you're demanding? Because it's about an exchange of value.
No
And
doubt.
so, absolutely demand what you want. Just be ready for somebody to say no and don't get upset. Go
Mhm.
find the place that's going to give you what you want, but also understand what your deal breakers are. If you're asking for the kitchen sink, you're not going to get that.
Yeah.
But what are the few dishes that are non-negotiable for you? And find the place that's going to do that, and then everything else is just gravy, right? So
Mm.
I tend to sit in the middle. From that standpoint, I guess I'm kind of a Libra, right? I tend to balance it both. Companies, do what you need to do. Nobody's telling you can do anything different as long as it's not illegal. But
Yeah.
just own that.
Yeah.
Employees and potential employees, ask for what you want, but be ready to not get it
Yeah. Wow.
or to get more than you expected,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Anything can
Yeah. Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So I
that
think
that
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 answered the
is
question.
I've done some reframing in my own life, just as you're talking about. You may get it, you may not, etc. And I used to be a person to say, kind of like, what's the worst that can happen, right? Just go out and
Yes.
do it. But the reframe for me has been, what's the best that can happen, right? So
Yes.
let's not even, and by the way, I have some exercises to like think through like worst case scenario and all that
Yes.
stuff, because I do believe that
Yes.
you need to at least be willing to accept it, right? If
Yes.
if that potentially happens, like,
Yes.
accept that. But at the same time, what is the best that can happen? And if
Mm-hmm.
you never have the conversation, right, then that's not going
Right.
to happen. As I run my own organization, it's a question of, if I don't put my vision out there, if I'm not willing to share it broadly, then
Mm-hmm.
I'm guaranteed to not attract, frankly, the
Yes.
people that I need to ultimately help run to even fulfill the vision
Right.
that I have, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
I agree
Yeah.
with that wholeheartedly. And my belief actually just that aligns so much is that
Yeah.
the organizations that are willing to be authentic and honest about, those things,
Mm-hmm.
combined with those people who are also willing to be honest about what their needs
Yes.
are,
Right.
are going to be the ones that, frankly, just, they're going to be some of the fastest growing, most
Yes.
profitable, effective, whatever
Right.
clients and stuff they have, products that they're creating and putting out.
Mm-hmm.
I just believe that they're going to be significantly better than any
Yes.
organization that operates in similar spaces, globally.
Yes.
It's just, just something I believe wholeheartedly.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree. I
yeah,
agree.
yeah, yeah. Well, Laurel, maybe some rapid fire stuff. This has been
Sure.
amazing, and I just want to touch on a couple things. And so,
Sure.
as you think about it, let's hop into maybe a resource, uh,
Okay.
book, show, etc., that you would highly recommend, that potentially, is about one of the topics that we
Yeah.
talked about today.
Sure. So, a book that I recommend, highly recommend, I've read it multiple times, is called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. That
Mm.
talks about,
Hmm.
he's the one that put out that whole idea of zone of excellence, zone of genius,
Yep.
especially if you're looking to potentially do something else.
Yep.
And he has a supplement to it called The Joy of Genius, which actually works you through determining what your zone of genius is.
Okay.
Highly, highly recommend that.
Big. Got
And
it.
for those who are in entrepreneur spaces or thinking about that, Seth Godin's book, This is Marketing, is actually really good too, talking about
Mm.
niching down and not being afraid of being really, really clear and really narrow in your niche. Now, not everybody needs
Yes.
to do that or wants to do that, but it's a
Yep.
very, very good perspective on getting really clear so people understand who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah.
So those would
Okay.
be books. But I'm a podcast junkie, and I just have to say, how I built this and Hidden Brain
Mm.
are and Revisionist History with Malcolm Gladwell can do no wrong in my book.
The
I am
guy is,
manifesting an
talk about
interview
a
with Malcolm
futurist,
Gladwell.
man. He is shout out to Malcolm.
Yes,
You got to
yes,
tag him, as we're saying this. He is unbelievable.
yes.
Absolutely.
He's unbelievable. And
Yeah.
so those are the
Guy
big
Raz
three.
too, though. I
Oh,
love, Guy
love
Raz is
him.
like how I built
Yes,
this. I went
yes,
to a live recording. Shout out to
yes.
you,
Did
Guy.
you?
I went to the live
Oh,
recording in DC,
Yeah.
with founder of Bevel back in the
Oh,
day. Um, are you
I
familiar
don't
with
know who
Bevel?
that is. No.
Yeah. Um, anyway, we'll
Now
put
I'm gonna
it
have to go
in
look
show
at it,
notes and
right?
everything else. Yeah. So it, Bevel originally started as a shaving company,
Mm-hmm.
uh, specifically for focused on men with curly hair,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yes.
straight razor, like all this. Tristan Walker. So shout out to you,
Yes.
Tristan.
Okay.
So I
Mm-hmm.
went and they did a live taping with Guy and Tristan, and I
Mm-hmm.
literally flew down to DC. Went with my cousin. I won 2 tickets to
Yeah.
go. Unbelievable. So two you
Oh,
shouted out two of my
yes.
actually favorite individuals
Yes.
sharing information. Yeah, absolutely. We'll put them in the
Love
show
them.
notes. That's huge. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. And for those of you, because I tend to be kind of a nerd, I mean, the Hidden Brain podcast is also with Shankar Vedantam is also phenomenal. He does a
Okay.
lot of behavioral type of stuff and
Oh,
leadership
interesting.
around how we show up. So it's a great one too. I mean, I'm kind of a behavioral nerd, so I just love that stuff,
That's
polyvagal
cool.
theory and ambivalence, and so it's a good one as well. So I
Okay.
would say those two books, and then go get on a podcast that talks about the things that you're thinking that you might want to do. Just go learn
Mhm.
something. Just go
Mhm.
learn something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Love those. We will add those in the show notes moving
Yeah.
forward. We've talked about habits and some
Yeah.
other things. You've talked about psychology. Do you have a life-changing habit that you would recommend, for some folks? Obviously, we've talked about learning as one
Yeah.
potentially, but in any others.
For me, so I get up really early in the morning. I'm a morning person,
Okay.
and but then I'm like to be in bed at like 8:30.
Well,
So
that
I'm
was going to
just
be my next question. Like, what
yeah.
time do you go to bed?
Yeah, my brain wakes up at 4. It just
Okay.
does. I've always been that way. So one of the things for me, and I also have to work in transparency, right? I have to work on being really consistent with this. Is the first thing I do when I get up is I always start with gratitude, and I have a
Mm,
meditation practice. And so I
mm,
always pray. I always say thank you, because the way my brain works is the minute I wake up, like I fall asleep really easy, but I have a hard time staying asleep. And the
ah,
minute my brain works up, it's already going. I mean, it is immediately moving to what needs to be done. Oh, here's a solution for that. And I have to quiet my brain to be able to set
mm,
my day. And so I intentionally really start with some sort of meditation, making sure I'm being very grateful for everything that happened. Say
mhm.
some prayers around my family and my friends and my village
Yeah.
before I do anything else. And then I try to get a row in every morning. So something to get
Mm.
my body moving in the
Okay.
morning. And when I do that and I'm really consistent with that, it
Yeah.
just sets up my day, for the rest of the day to be
Love it.
much more focused and much
Yep.
more productive. So having
Okay.
some sort of morning routine is
Mhm.
really important, and an
Okay.
evening one to get
Yeah.
yourself kind of calm.
Absolutely. Okay. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Um, let's go back and these can kind of be, this can wind us down,
Okay.
at this point. But can you give? I won't even say your best piece of advice, but
Mhm.
a piece of advice.
Mhm.
For those people who want to drive change through people. You've given so many nuggets today.
Yeah.
But we are focusing, a little bit more on kind of once again this human
Yes.
capital. And so
Mhm.
for those leaders out there, executives, and frankly throughout organizations and
Mhm.
those starting their own,
Right.
some advice for them as they're looking to ultimately drive change through people.
The biggest thing if you're going to drive change through people is listening actively. That's it. What are people saying? What are they not saying? The quiet person in the room, why are they so quiet? Um, People will listen to what you say, they will believe what you do. And so listen to what people are telling you they need, they want, they heard. Ask for clarification and then listen. Listen to understand, not to respond. So that's the big thing for me. If you're trying to drive change, because change is hard, change is constant, but change is hard,
Yep.
especially if you have been inconsistent, you have to listen. People will tell you where their pain points are. People will tell you where they're uncomfortable. And if you can really listen to what's going on with your folks, with your teams, with your organization, you can craft messages and craft actions that address those things. Even if you can't give them everything they want, which you won't be able to, when people understand why and that there's a method to the madness, even if they don't like it, at least they understand it. And then the ball's in their court, whether or not they want to stay or go. But at least they can't say they didn't understand. They can say they didn't agree, but they can't say they didn't understand. So listen, listen.
Mhm. Okay. That is really, really good. Really good. We're going to tie a bow on that one.
Yeah.
So Laurel, hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Speaking of
Thank
gratitude, just
you.
thank you for taking time out of your
Absolutely.
schedule, which I'm sure is full,
Yeah.
to spend some time with us on the Only Dream Big pod. Just gem after gem after gem, so practical. There's
Thank you.
such a depth, frankly, that you shared with us today. Where can folks find you? Where can they follow you?
Yeah.
If they want to reach out, et cetera, want to be able
Sure.
to direct them directly to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on the show because I love it. And I saw your tweet about the futurists too. So thank you. Thank you for this opportunity because I love talking with people who are trying to do positive things. So I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show. The easiest way to get to me is my website, laurelrutledge.com. Everything is there. The services are there.
Mhm.
Connection to my podcast is there. The
Yep.
Fireside Show, everything is there on my website. I am on social and I'm everywhere at Laurel K. Rutledge or the Rutledge Perspective on
Okay.
everything. So
Okay.
Twitter and LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm on TikTok, but I never get on TikTok. So Instagram, I'm on the gram. Pinterest is coming, right? I'm doing some more on
Oh, wow.
Pinterest. So you can catch
Okay.
me in most places. So,
That is awesome. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
That is great. That is great. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all of you all, faithful listeners to the show. We're so excited to have you. And because we're recording this, look, I actually got another special guest today.
Hi.
Look at this. This is my 2-year-old, soon to be 3, at the end of July
Hey.
daughter,
Oh, that's
Sophia,
great.
which if you follow me on any
Hi, Sophia.
social media platform and everything else, you have probably seen her. Thank you once
Yeah.
again. This has been the Only Dream Big pod. We'll see you next week.
Bye.